I wrote the book in 1966, and the film was made in '73. And here we are 30 years later, and I think it's every bit as powerful, if not more so, than it was when I first did it.
I'm gonna name my last album "The Spook that Sat by the Door." You know what I mean? When I finished my situation with our partnership at Atlantic, and for anybody that ain't seen that book, seen that movie or read the book, it's about a gang member from Chicago who presented himself in a way he never caught no cases. He had a clean cut look, and he infiltrated the CIA.
Yep.
And he became educated and basically he used their agenda, which was to have a token nigga in the CIA for political reasons. You know, we gonna speak blunt, fuck it. He used it against him. And I think that in terms of hip hop, you think of the message that they embrace, I feel parallel with, like, you know what I mean, the power structure. I don't mean the culture of hip hop, but the power structure of music. They got prescribed personas they expect from us. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like the way he used their intention against him was one of my underlying strategies.
I wouldn't give a damn if nobody white ever read my book. If they do, I want them to pay for it and get my royalties. And if they get something out of it, I say, fine. But my audience is not white. I don't write for black bourgeois intellectuals. I write for the people on the block where I live.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
The Spook Who Sat by the Door. The controversial best-selling novel now becomes a shocking screen reality. The story of the first black agent in the CIA.
Whoever they select will be the best-known spy since 007.
Their first mistake was letting him in.
And let me congratulate you on being the first Negro officer in the Central Intelligence Agency.
Their worst mistake was letting him out.
You really want to mess with Whitey? I can show you how.
For 5 years, he was their token Negro.
Freeman, you people must serve.
For 5 years, he kept his cool.
Man, you just don't get along. I think you'd be happier with a mop in your hands. Like your mama.
And in return, they taught him how to spy, how to fight, how to kill. For 5 years, he was the spook who sat by the door. And then he turned gangs of ghetto kids into a highly trained guerrilla army.
We live off the land. We match technology with spontaneity and improvisation. Men against machines, brains against computers. Now, if you don't think it can work, you check out Algeria, Kenya, Korea, and Vietnam. Can you dig it?
He turned a summer riot into a revolution.
This is not about hate white folks. It's about loving freedom enough to die or kill for it if necessary.
He turned the American dream into a nightmare. Yesterday, a novel. Today, a movie. The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
And the mayor's office is now air-conditioned, courtesy of the Black Freedom Fighters of Chicago.
I want people to think. And out of thought, concerned action. You don't act first and then think. You think first and then act. That's why we were given brains. That's why we don't act instinctively. And when we do, we're wrong. Whichever way they go, I want them to think about what I've had to say. I'm not trying to recruit anybody. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I want to shake up the mind. I want people to look at that movie and go out of there thinking. And I think I've accomplished that purpose.
All right. First and foremost, mic check, mic check. Make sure that I could be heard.
Yeah.
All right, and I hear my brother Reggie. There he is. What's good? Salute to the chat. Salute to everybody that's watching on the replay. Salute to everybody that's been here for this whole time, rocking with us as we've been reading, even before this book. And salute my brother Andrew Charles in the building early, as usual. And salute to my brother Reggie, my tag team partner, as we get into this chapter 16 of the Spook Who Sat by the Door today. We're going to go through 16, 17, and 18 for sure. And we're trying to get these just reading in before these fights start. After that, we only have chapter 19 and 20. You know, if we got time, we can knock those out today. If not, you know what I'm saying, we'll knock those out early tomorrow. But as far as the story, where we are is the first wave have already happened. Police emptied a clip out on the kid, started some unrest in the neighborhood. I believe they said every bullet except for one bullet struck the kid. And of course, the neighborhood got pissed off that once again the police out here doing too much. The community started to destroy property, a little bit of looting, a little bit of rioting, and as things started to calm down a little bit, the commander in the police department decided to exacerbate the situation, releasing some dogs in the neighborhood because he felt like, you know, niggas don't like dogs, so we're gonna go ahead and agitate them a little bit more and make them afraid to do it again. So that kicked off another wave of things. After which we see Freeman meeting up with his high school homeboy Dawson, who's also a beat cop now in Chicago, and they have a heart-to-heart, start talking about the situation, and Dawson starts to let him know that the black police officers in the community started to get blamed for the situation, and then the police department started to kind of keep them out of what's going on next. They want to bring in the National Guard, which is all white, according to Dawson. And so Dawson was having, he's second guessing not only his own purpose, but the effectiveness of his job, because he once thought that, you know, the only way to beat the system is to join the system and from within make a change as being a black cop. So Freeman started to let him know what it is that he's doing on his end as a social worker with his program that he works with at-risk minors and with the gangs in Chicago to kind of turn them away from the way that they operate and harm each other and harm the community as gang members, and see if they can have a happy medium between them two. Speaking of which, Freeman has to go to a board meeting for that social activist group and that organization, and he has to meet with Professor Thompson, who's a part of the Department of Sociology and Social Welfare of the at the University of Chicago, and who himself was an expert on juvenile delinquency, and Freeman had to convince them that the rioting and the community uprising wasn't the gangs, and that their program has been effective. So they in turn have decided to try to parlay that into a way to take credit for the gangs not being involved with the rioters the next time they have their little national convention on American society and sociologists, I believe, and they can take the credit by writing them, a nice little report how they do and make it a matter of academia and studies. So Mr. Stevens and Freeman we're then on the same, you know what I mean, on the same page, because I believe Stevens wanted to kind of admonish Freeman and make him the scapegoat because the media had been trying to frame the rioting as the gang members and the people in the streets causing all the ruckus. But Freeman was on ground zero, you know, boots on the ground, and he told them, "Nah, it's the community. The gang's been kind of quiet." So um, here we are in chapter 16, um, and let's get it started. The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the novel by Sam Greenlee. Uh, we're gonna get it started after Reggie. Reggie, you got anything you want to say before we jump right on in?
No, you elaborated on it well, man. I ain't that good in these breakdowns like that, like you. So yeah, absolutely, bro.
All right. Yeah, man, we're just winging it. All right, without any further ado, as they say, let's go on, jump on in chapter 16, The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Freeman strode through his apartment, tense and restless from the foundation board meeting. His cover was even more secure than ever. He would be free to roam the area, befriend the troops and cops, gathering intelligence as an almost invisible agent, but he would never enjoy deceiving whites. Even in that meeting, one part of him was crying to tell them what he thought and felt, but he couldn't afford to yield to that temptation. There was too much at stake. He roamed his apartment, turned up the air conditioner, and moved to his records. He hesitated in front of the Miles Davis records, then moved to the blues. He chose Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Lightning Hopkins, Bill Bronzy, and put them on the changer. He stood midway between the speakers and listened to the first few bars of Hoochie Coochie Man. Then walked into the kitchen and filled a Danish teakwood ice container. He mixed a martini of 4 parts Beefeater's gin to 1 part Nolly Pratt Vermont over the rocks in an old-fashioned glass. He walked to the Syrian womb chair and sat sipping his drink and listening to the music. He gazed around the room, and there was not a mistake in the cover. It reflected perfectly the superficial, materialistic, white-type middle-class Freeman. By any contemporary definition, Freeman was a nigga who had made it in white society. He had everything any red-blooded American boy could want. And for a nigga, wow. The apartment gleamed and glistened with chrome, formica, aluminum, and steel shone gently, and well-polished wood bulged with grown-up toys, color television, stereo, video type, exotic carvings and knives. He dressed fashionably and well read the right books and magazines. The pay for sellout niggas increased annually, he thought. Yes, the Negro profession is really swinging nowadays, but it looks like I'm going to throw a little shit in the game. When whites find out what they must really know down deep inside, the niggas like me don't really communicate with or control the rest. A whole lot of cats like the fake Freeman will be on the outside looking in. And where will I be after the deal goes down? Can't think about that. Got to take it one day at a time. Make sure the thing won't end if they get to me. When did it all start? When did I really know that Whitey was nowhere for niggas? It would be so easy to sink in the softness of this scene. Let's face it, he thought. I like this shit. I drive a beautiful piece of machinery, drink good whiskey, wear good clothes, and have more chicks than I can really handle. It would only take a little lying to myself to think I was really into something. Tell myself I earn it all in the best Horatio Alger tradition. Put down all the spades, too lazy to do what I've done. But Whitey helps. He might tell you that you're different from the rest, and in that next breath, remind you you're all the same underneath your manicured fingernails and J-press suit. The ghetto had been a refuge in his childhood. He had no close contact with whites until he entered high school, split almost 50-50, white and black. But it was two schools, originally separated by unspoken rule, as if someone had painted signs saying white and colored. Freeman hadn't thought much about the whites. He had his own colored friends. It happened during the beginning of his second year, just after the war, with the black veterans returning from the War of Freedom, bitter and delusioned. It happened on a bright autumn Chicago day. It was sweater weather, gray, and the sun peeking through now and then, and the wind toward the lake. The football season was to start that Saturday. The big red streetcar moved down 63rd Street under the L tracks like a big bug in a tunnel. It was crowded by the time it reached South Park Avenue. A nice crowd. A laughing, friendly, teen, brown, and black crowd. When it reached Stewart and the crowd tumbled off, laughing and loud, there was another car on the corner across the street, an eastbound car, and its crowd was mixed, black, brown, and white. The sun was out now, and the students would be sitting on a low concrete wall in front of the school, some of the porch of the sweet shops across the street, the girls laughing, soft and low, their teeth flashing white in their brown faces.
The leaves should be dropping off the trees and the football silhouette against the blue, gray, and white sky. A blackjack game in the alley and the school cop ready to saunter conspicuously across the street a few minutes before the bell rang to see that the gamblers weren't late. It wasn't like that. It was frozen. The few smiles were frozen. The student looks and the uncertain frowns were frozen. The battered football lay on the sidewalk unnoticed, and the laughter deep down in the pretty brown breast was frozen. And the group of white faces on the steps of the frame house across the street from the school were frozen with bleak, determined looks. Then it started from the porch, from the white faces, low and weak, and then getting stronger. Old Black Joe. I hear those darkies' voices gently calling. No breathing in brown throats. No breathing in brown throats. And then a slow movement to the curb. And the bored cops and the squad cars on the corner didn't look bored anymore. The singing faltered for a second, and then the voices got stronger. I hear those darky voices gently calling. In the street now, and the squad car turning its engine over, and no laughter, and no smiling, and now fear in pretty blue eyes. A defiant sneer above the black leather jacket, and a sign pulled into view. We don't go to school with niggers anymore. I hear those voices gently calling. A ring around the porch now, a black, a brown ring, and the black leather jackets and blue eyes, and the blue jeans and white faces, black hair and blonde hair. On the porch, standing on the steps now, and hate, and white faces, and brown faces, and black faces. A white handkerchief flashed in the sun, was wrapped around black knuckles, and another, the sun glinted on a knife blade, and the street was full now, and the squad car pulling out from the curb, and the cops talking into the microphone. I hear those voices. White handkerchief around black knuckles, and knives along their legs, and no more song, and no one seemed to breathe. A bottle shattered on the curb, and a tense black boy moved towards the porch. The bottle's jagged neck in his fist. Look out. Gonna get me a goddamn old fade today. The cop out of the car, then in the car, the black boy inside, and the crowd moving around the car, pressing close, in fear now, and the phallicid faces inside, not bored anymore. The car rocking, in the sea of faces, black faces, brown faces, yellow faces. Fear and hate and curses, and then a bass voice from a brown face over the crowd noises. Clear. I hear those darky voices gently calling. The crowd picking it up, and the car rocking in rhythm. Let him out, white man. Let him out. Or we open this car like a sardine can and come get him. And we get you too, white man. We get you good. Get back. Go on to school, you kids. I hear those voices. Let him out. The car rocking in the dark sea. Better let him go, Jim. They got some squads on the way. The black boy back in the streets, the crowd milling around. Then movement towards the forgotten porch. Empty now. The leather jackets, the long hair, the blue eyes and blue jeans gone, and the signs on the steps. We won't go to school with niggers anymore. No song and no smiles. The sun is out and it's sweater weather with the first football game Saturday, but no laughter from the pretty brown throats, no blackjack games in the alley, no football against the sky, and the sun on a sign on the porch, and the sun on the sign on the porch. The martini was sour with the memory. He put it down and left the apartment. The stereo would shut itself off automatically. As he closed the door, he heard Bronzy, if you white, all right. If you brown, stick around. But if you're black, get back, get back. He walked out into the warm air of the streets and began walking, ignoring the car. He found himself on East 47th at Drexel Boulevard. He crossed and answering the smell of broiling barbecue. He walked into a shop on the north side of the street and ordered a plate of short ribs with medium hot sauce. He walked outside and headed west again, took the paper plate from the bag and holding it in his left hand, tore off a rib, eating as he walked. Except for the passing motorized National Guard patrols, the ghetto seemed normal again. The burning had been light this far east. West of South Park Boulevard, it was much worse. He finished the ribs, coleslaw, and french fries just the other side of Langley. Wiped his hands on the paper napkin, then rolled the bones in the paper plate and bag, placed it in a garbage can.
He stopped in front of a record store and entered. There was an old Otis Redding record playing on a speaker outside. The girl behind the counter was dancing to the music, and Freeman joined her. They smiled at one another across the counter. He pointed to the 45 RPM record on the turntable when it had finished, and the girl placed it in the bag for him. Sweet thing. What time you get off work? He said. Sorry, baby, but my old man's picking me up. You know, Uncle Tom? Well, I sure wouldn't want to mess with him. But every chick I see says that's her old man. He smiled. Well, baby, he could be any of them. He could even be my old man. Sure could, so treat him right. Honey, I've been taking good care of him since the thing started. He was out in them streets night. He was out in them streets night it started, and he wasn't nothing but man. A whole lot of men got made that night. Better believe it. Lots of cats walking tall out there and chicks digging. And she was right. There was a pride and defiance in the ghetto in place of sultriness and despair. There were jokes about the National Guard everywhere. Freeman stood on a street corner and watched four men loud talking for a small audience of their friends. Each sustained a comic monologue as long as he could about white soldiers of the National Guard and would have to move off stage for another when his comic inventiveness became exhausted. Freeman moved on, still chuckling. Thirsty, he turned into a small dark bar. He paused just inside the door, allowing his eyes to accustom themselves to the gloom. Recognizing a woman at the bar, he walked over to her. Hello, Mrs. Duncan. Mind if I join you? Fine. He motioned to the bartender and ordered a Ballantine's ale. How's your son? He has been hanging out on the block, and some of the boys are worried about him. Shorty don't have time to hang out. He got a job now, making good money. Just bought me a new color TV. The boys say he's not pushing, but he's hooked. Now, he ain't really no junkie. I mean, sure, he shoot up every now and then, but most of the kids do that nowadays. They don't seem to like whiskey much. He say he ain't hooked. I don't imagine he got more than a $20, $30 a week habit, and that ain't no habit at all. Woman down the hall where I live, now she got a habit. If she don't get a fix when she need it, well, we all gotta go down there and hold her down and clean up when she gets sick and all. Sometimes people gotta be with her day and night. We gotta take turns. Now that's a habit. My son ain't got nothing like that. No, sir. Did you ever think he might wind up in jail? Now let somebody put some heat on the precinct station and the fuzz need to bust somebody, and then he won't have to do more than 5 6 months, and the people he working for be putting money away for him all that time. But they like him a lot. Say he a smart boy. So I don't think they choose him to get busted, even if the heat's on. Does he ever think about going back to school? He don't want no more part of school. You know how them teachers is. They hate us. And sometimes colored ones the worst. How come they hate us? Fear? What they got to be afraid of? Seem like they got everything going for them. Did you ever think Shorty might get some kind of regular employment? Mr. Freeman, don't start coming on like a social worker. Everybody know you hip to our scene. You about the only social worker they got any time for. How are you going to get a job? Time was when I was first come up from down south, there was plenty work. But there ain't nothing nowadays. Steel mills done, automated, and the stockyards moved to them states where they don't like unions. You mean the state with the right to work laws? Yeah, them states don't like unions. And the factories moving too. And down south, ain't that something? We come up here to work in them, and they move the factories back where we come from. Mr. Free, you know it ain't no work for us unless it's out there in them streets. Yeah, he said softly, almost to himself. He finished his beer, motioned to the bartender, and paid for hers as well. Well, tell Shorty I said hello.
I sure will. He just like the rest of the boys. Think you really swinging? Thanks for the drink. She returned her attention to the television as he left the bar. He ran into Shorty, dapper in a lightweight suit, skinny brim straw hat, and wraparound shades. Hey Turk, how you doing? Cool, Shorty. Just saw your mother inside. She been kind of worried about what's been happening. Think we can do anything to help her? Freeman turned to look at the bar. No, Shorty. No, Shorty, he said as he moved away. She doesn't need any help from us. He slowly retraced his steps along 47th, walking home. It was dusk now, a few hours before curfew. The streets was full of people, the neon flashing red, pink, and blue on the dark skins of their faces. He listened to the music and the sounds of his home, sniffed the smell. He turned south on Drexel Boulevard and walked along the almost deserted streets towards Drexel Square. Automobiles made a wide circuit of the riot area in case there might be another outbreak. The hot air became hotter and more still. There was no breeze blowing at all. Then there was a faint stirring from the lake to the east and the first faint smell of rain. He had just crossed 55th Street. Oh, sorry, he just crossed 50th Street when the first big drop came down, splashing on the pavement, still hot from the day's sun. The rain increased, and there was first the musty smell of the concrete sidewalk, then the sharper smell of the asphalt, and as it increased, the clean green smell of the trees and the grass. One thing about Chicago, he thought, even in the ghetto, there are trees and grass. He smiled to himself. That's supposed to make being black and poor all right. When Watts happened, all them white folks saying, what they riding for? Why they got palm trees in that slum? A palm tree lined slum, it could only happen in America. It was raining harder now, and Freeman walked easily through the now deserted street, the cool rain feeling good on his skin. Suddenly, he began to run, slowly at first, and then, as his muscles became warm and loose, faster. It was dark now, the streets beautiful in the faint light from the street lamps and apartment windows, the trees and grass in a translucent green. He ran across the street onto the broad strip of grass which ran down Drexel. If a cop comes along now, I'm a dead nigger. Any nigger running at night has got to have done something wrong. He smiled to himself and sprinted the last 100 yards to Drexel Square. He stood near the fountain, listening to the water running in it, to the sounds of the rain on the streets and pavements. The rain had awakened the clean smell of Washington Park just across Cottage Grove, and from somewhere in a large kitchenette apartment building behind him, he could hear someone playing James Brown. He walked to 55th Street and then east to his apartment building. It was still raining when he entered his apartment. His clothing soaked. He undressed in the bathroom and took a very hot shower, and then went into the kitchen wearing his terry cloth robe. Even after the barbecue, he was hungry, and he prepared a cheese omelet and washed it down with a Carlsberg beer. He walked into the living room and looked at the unfinished martini he had abandoned when the apartment. When he had abandoned the the unfinished martini he had abandoned when the apartment and his cover, the things he was doing. He closed in. Oh, he says had closed in on him. He took the glass into the kitchen, poured out the warm martini, and rinsed the glass. He thought of Shorty's mother as he mixed himself a Scotch highball, walked into the living room, and put Muddy Waters on the turntable. He sat listening to his Mississippi Delta sound. I'm ready, I'm ready as anybody can be.
Chapter 17. Freeman met with his staff, Dean, Scott, Stud, and Pretty Willie, one night in the back of the pool room. The riots had continued for 4 nights, and the calling up of the National Guard seemed imminent. But the mayor was milking the riots for every bit of sympathy and publicity that he could muster. His picture was in every paper. There were shots of him on the television, newscasts blaming the rioting on communists and agitators, speaking in his flat, unattractively nasal voice. Politicians were politicians were falling all over themselves to get into the spotlight and say their piece, having run out of anything new to say about Vietnam. Since the National Guard would be under the control of the governor, the mayor was reluctant to request its use to put down the riots. But there was increasing pressure to call in troops, and Freeman figured they would be in within 24 to 36 hours at the most. The rioting had leapfrogged from 24 square block area, originally cordoned off, and police chased groups in an area as far north as Roosevelt Road and as far south as 61st, and the Negroes, the West Side Ghetto, led by the Comanches, were getting into the act. The police by now were exhausted and resorting to guns more often. The official total of dead was now placed at 28, none of them white. Okay, that's the scene. We make our move on Sunday. But since it looks as if the guard will move in tomorrow night or the day after, we'll have to move some of our equipment outside of the ghetto and stash it. If they impose a curfew and set up checkpoints, we'll have to slip out the best way we can. Daddy will handle the command post. We'll use Stud and Willie's attack teams, and Willie's will handle the demolition. Stud's team will provide cover. We don't want any shooting if we can help it. We'll have plenty of that later. Right now, we want to hit Whitey in his own territory and make him look silly. The white man can handle a put down, but a put on hangs him up. Now, the time has to be perfect or it spoils the propaganda effect. We want a series of dramatic incidents to advertise our existence, and then we can get down to the dirty work we've been training for. We'll go over this thing in detail, just like with the bank job, every night until H hour. When Freeman left through the back entrance of the pool room, they were huddled over the plans spread on a pool table. He had been in the streets every night since the riots began. The activity was not as intense, except at sporadic moments when a particular act by the cops would arouse people at a spot here and there in the area. Nevertheless, the people of the neighborhood continued to hit back whenever they could. The women shouted insults at the police, white or black, or ignored them as if they did not exist, even when following their orders. The arrest continued in an effort to break the rioting by jailing the ringleaders and troublemakers. The police spent a great deal of time looking for black nationalists and communists, but the riots had been going on for 3 days before they could produce a leaflet having any Marxist Leninist overtones. The ambulances and vans full of the arrested moved regularly in and out of the area. Emergency rations had to be brought in because each of the supermarkets had been stripped and any of them gutted by fire. Many of them gutted by fire. The establishment began to retaliate. Social workers increased their harassment, but the white social workers had to be escorted by police, those few willing to venture into the riot area. Welfare checks were held up. The unemployment compensation office on 47th and South Park was closed for renovations. Adult literacy classes were discontinued. Playgrounds were closed. The swimming pools in the Washington Park were emptied. A curfew of 10 o'clock was imposed. Bars, liquor stores, and pool rooms were closed. People were stopped in the street repeatedly by police and searched. Freeman was known throughout the area by now, by both the police and people. He chatted with the street gangs, not preaching to them, asking few questions, listening when they wanted to volunteer anything, and they knew he would not carry tales concerning their raiding and looting to the police.
Rioting had been largely reduced to the gangs and the older, more bitter and desperate men, unemployed and without hope. But the rest of the community did not object to their activity. They felt it was past time to let the white man know they existed. Freeman knew they no longer gave a damn. Advocates of nonviolence were trucked in by the police from their normal integrated haunts to try and pacify the crowds, and were met with general abuse and ridicule. Every night they met in the closed bar room and went over their plans for Sunday night. 2 days after the first meeting, the National Guard moved into the area. The people were not impressed with them any more than with the police, but they had more weapons and armor. The commander of the Guard unit held a press conference full of tough guy cliches and indicated that he expected a return to law and order immediately, or else. He did not indicate what or else meant, but he was used to giving orders and having them obeyed. He did not expect to have any trouble with the inhabitants of the ghetto and was somewhat dismayed that the police had not been able to handle the riots, but he had become convinced that the police, melancholy hoodlums. He thought that he and his men could show them how it was done. No one was willing to believe that the rioting was a spontaneous uprising by people disgusted with their lot, least of all the mayor and the politicians. They continued to search frantically for Muslims, communists, black nationalists, and agitators of any political kind, strip or spectrum, and proudly display any they could arrest for incitement to riot or any literature, pamphlets, or signs they could uncover. The mayor had often blamed Republicans for his trouble, but felt that communists and agitators were more appropriate scapegoats for the rioting. A drab, colorless figure, he was known nationally as a powerful politician in his party, but he was almost a non-entity outside of Chicago. Now his picture was in papers everywhere, and he began to think in terms of national office for the first time in his career. The National Guard commander, Colonel Archie Bull Evans, shared a common trait among military officers. He was a loudmouth fool. He had tried to stay in the regular army after the war, but could not bear giving up his gold major leagues for the stripes of a staff sergeant, and returned to his hardware store in suburban Aurora. Joined the National Guard in the ensuing years, attaining the rank of full colonel, commanding an infantry National Guard regiment. His regiment was sloppily trained and ill disciplined, but because of the colonel's mania concerning spit and polish impressions in garrison and on the parade grounds, the colonel himself was a model of military I'm jacking this word. Dynamism. Dang, how you pronounce this word? I'm not going to even front. Dynamism is impressive in uniform, as he was nondescript in his mufti. He wore a beret of infantry blue, and the infantry blue ascot pre-knotted with the hitting snaps at his throat. There were the green tabs of the combat officers on his epaulets, pinned there by the regimental insignia. His uniform wore tailor-made of a tropical worsted or tropical garbardine. I'm jacking these words up bad. He wore the spit shine paratrooper boots made for him by bootmaker in London. He wore a pearl-handled, silver-plated Colt 38 and carried a Malaki swagger stick. The colonel wore his hair in a close-cropped military brush and surrounded himself with short staff officers to minimize the effect of his 5'7.5" height. He had a short, thick neck and powerful shoulders in his arms and a deep chest, and he loved to arm wrestle larger men and beat them. Colonel Evans' first press conference was a near disaster, and the television crew was relieved that they were filming on tape instead of live because of his profanity. He told the members of the press that he intended teaching the people of the area respect for law and order, and that there would be no further nursemaiding of them. He said that he did not believe in special treatment for Negroes. They should stop whining and start working and earn the respect of the white citizenry by demonstrating their worth. Man, within 24 hours, he announced that things were back to normal and that they are back on the bottom. Woo! And that they are back on the bottom and we are back on top. Man, said Freeman, after reading Evans' comments in the paper and observing him on television. That cat couldn't be any better for us if we ordered him special. Within 36 hours, Evans had solidly united the inhabitants of the riot area, many of them who had tired of rioting and disruption, public relations feat, a major proportion of major proportions. Freeman observed the guard unit with an ex-infantry company commander, trained eye, and noticed its defects beneath the glitter.
Yeah, first that my bad. I was eating cashews, man, and I didn't want to jump in there, but that word was dandyism. Like, you know, when they be like, you dressing dandy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I was tearing that word up.
Yeah, dandyism, and then the other one was nurse maiden, I think, that you was talking about. All right, so boom, 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 boom. All right, next page. It's Jive outfit, not much better trained than a Boy Scout troop. They're a drag by National Guard standards. First sign of pressure, though, and they're going to be trigger happy as hell. Excuse me. They'll probably waste a lot of people, but when we're ready, they won't be hard to get rid of at all. Man, that colonel was so stupid. I wonder how come he's not a general. They had checked weapons and explosives in 3 large suitcases in the check room at Union Station. 3 went into the check room wearing the red caps of the station's porters and checked out the suitcases. Freeman watched it all through the plate glass window of the coffee shop across the big station floor. They got the suitcases with no trouble, past the coffee shop without looking at Freeman, and went up the stairs to the street above. It was a short distance from the train station to the city hall, their destination. There was a bit more than an hour, so Freeman ordered breakfast, eating it slowly and reading about the riots in Vietnam, a newspaper propped against the sugar bowl. He left when he had eaten and walked to an empty corner of the station, sat on the bench and pretended to be asleep. He had purchased a ticket on the train leaving for Memphis, in case a cop might think him a vagrant or a bum catching some sleep in the cool station. At a few minutes to 3, he entered one of the empty phone booths and dialed the number of the Chicago Sun-Times. He asked for Victor Philman. Mr. Philman, I have a beat for you. I understand you like that kind of thing. That is the right word, beat. They stopped using scoop in the movies in the 30s, I understand. Who is this? Uncle Tom, the official spokesman for the Black Freedom Fighters of America. We are the Chicago chapter of the Mau Mau. Look, buddy, if this is some kind of gag, I'm not in the least bit amused. No gag, baby. And if your watch has a sweet hand, you can time it. In exactly 48 seconds, you will hear an explosion. Down there on the river, you should be able to hear it very well. 36 seconds now. The explosion will be that of the mayor's nice new office in the nice new city hall, which was built The explosion will be that of the mayor's nice office in the nice new city hall, which was built by very, very few black men because of the nasty building trade unions, you know. When the smoke clears, the offices will be something of a mess. I think you ought to be able to hear something now. Freeman could hear nothing inside the big railroad station, but he heard a muffled roar through the telephone receiver at his ear. That's it, Mr. Freeman. That's it, Mr. Philman. Now you can discount any speculation by the mayor or police that this was an assassination attempt that failed. We blew it when we wanted, and as an advertisement that we mean business. We want the National Guard out of the ghetto, or we will run them out. Then we can talk about how to improve things for the people. Dig? I'll keep in touch, Mr. Feldman. It's not that we don't trust you, dig, but you like having a beat and you might print the truth if it's exclusive. There hasn't been much truth printed about what's been happening on the South Side lately. Remember, we blew the mayor's office when we wanted to, when it was empty and he was home in bed. Nobody want to make that ass into a martyr. Bye now. He hung up, went outside, and drove home. By 4 o'clock, he was asleep. The blowing up of the mayor's office made the front pages of the papers the next morning, but only Feldman's column held anything concerning the phone call, and it was played with humor as if a crank call. It did not surprise Freeman, since the mayor, politicians, newspapers, and whites in general would prefer to think it a communist assassination attempt on the mayor. That was all right with Freeman, because the longer they looked at communists, the longer they would be looking for whites. The United States Communist Party used Negroes as showpieces and flunkies, just like all other American institutions. The best cover they had was the white man stereotypes concerning Negroes. He called Feldman the next evening and chided him for not printing his phone call on the front page. He announced that the motor car of one of the Negro aldermen would be painted yellow and white. Yellow because he got no balls, and white because that's his favorite color. It's to let him know what his constituents think of him. Good night, Mr. Feldman. Feldman called the alderman's home, apologized for waking him, and asked if his car was missing. Upon checking, the alderman found that the car was indeed missing and called the police. The police found it parked in a zone reserved for police vehicles just down the street from the precinct station in the alderman's neighborhood.
It had been painted yellow and white. This prank received small story on page 4. Received a small story on page 4, as well as half of the Victor Feldman's column. But the incident spread throughout all of Chicago's ghettos by the grapevine, and they were discussed everywhere. Jokes were told of how Spades had air conditioned how Spades had air conditioned the mayor's office by blowing a hole in the wall. The mayor continued his communist kick, and he was echoed by his black puppet alderman. Other things began to happen, all predicted by Uncle Tom in his nightly phone calls to Feldman. Jeeps, which were not well guarded, ground to a halt on their patrols, their engines ruined by sugar placed in the gas tanks. Other Jeeps were found with all the tires sliced. Signs were painted late at night saying, "Whitey, go home." Prowling military patrols found the frequencies of their radios jammed without warning, and the jamming device would abruptly go off the air before it could be traced to its source. One such device did not go off the air, and when traced by triangulations, was found in the trunk of the colonel's personnel Buick Riviera. The occupation troops gradually became objects of humor and ridicule, and their ineptitudes, in spite of their spit and polish, became obvious to the mayor, governor, and city police, who resented being replaced by what they considered amateur, part-time soldiers. The morale of the troops, many of whom were were losing pay from their jobs and having been called up, declined sharply and ridiculed by the people. Plus, the constant harassment of practical jokes took their toll. Freeman set up another raid on the most prominent of the radio stations, beaming their broadcast to the ghetto audience. Entering the West Side station, wearing nylon stocking mask, they locked up a Negro disc jockey and two engineers in his storeroom and went on air. Hey, 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 old bean, and you too, baby. This is Uncle Tom of the Freedmen Fighters, interrupting your favorite program to bring you news of the urban underground dedicated to the cause that Mr. Charlie is a drag and to the inhabitants of occupied territory of the South Side. I indicate this program to the happy members of the National Guard Army of Occupation as well. But I'm afraid we are fresh out of hillbilly music. We're fresh out of hillbilly music, the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, even if they are more popular than Christ. How are the happy National Guardsmen soul brothers and sisters? I see all those pictures of those colorless cats playing football with you and handing out care packages. Or is it just the same old surplus food you've been getting without so much publicity from the welfare? Anyway, if you believe the newspapers, those are the sweetest white soldiers going, even better than the ones who hand out candy in Vietnam to the kids in the village they just burned. Like, if you believe our free press, they must be the most beloved army of occupation since the dawn of its history. But we know better, don't we, baby? We know about the 14-year-old kid who was shot last week because he didn't move quick enough, about how law and order is being brought to the lawless South Side, but the numbers of dope peddling still swings, about how they spend more time looking for non-existent communists than they do polishing their brass. And you know, baby, they are the brashest polishing army unit in the world. The news is the troops have to go immediately, if not sooner. And if they don't, we will kick them out, including Bullhead Evans. Now, won't we, baby? The Freedom Fighters, the urban underground of Black Chicago, now deliver this ultimatum. Get out by Sunday or be prepared for war. And now, soul brothers and sisters, before the next message from your sponsor, a few jams, some James Brown, Esther Phillips, and the sweet singing Supremes. Whitey, please go home. We don't want you living next door either. When the police arrived, they found the three locked in the storeroom, the propaganda being aired by tape, and no one anywhere around. The Black Freedom Fighters became the talk of the occupied riot area. Handbills appeared announcing their feats until now, announcing their feats until now, including the capture of the radio station, the broadcast, and the blowing up of the mayor's office. The bills promised more to come. Colonel Evans ordered the arrest of anyone found with a propaganda handbill in his or her possession, with his troops to police the areas and pick up the rest of the propaganda leaflets from the streets and alleys. The radio station was guarded thereafter, but the propaganda broadcast continued with the disc jockey format. The first was broadcast from the alleyway, not far from the L station on 51st Street. Garvin found a Japanese portable tape recorder playing through a loudspeaker attached high to the steel supports of the L tracks.
The first guardman to climb and attempt to tear down the equipment found that it had been booby-trapped with the wire attached to the metal outdoor speaker, which led to the third rail. The electric shock hurled him to the ground, and he was hospitalized. The broadcast continued for a growing crowd until an electrician disconnected it. Each night at the same time, another broadcast would be made from a similar booby trap setup from the roof of an apartment building, a garage can in the alley, hidden in a newsstand, and once through the speakers of an army truck which patrolled the neighborhood announcing orders and dispensing National Guard propaganda which had been stolen and parked in an alley. The guard was continuously harassed, and neither arrest, investigation, nor threats could suppress the growing opposition to the troops by the underground of freedoms and the populace at large. Evans was furious at being made look a fool by people he held in contempt. He blamed it on the communists. You know, they would have neither the guts nor intelligence for this kind of thing if it were not communist inspired, led, and directed. Let the commies get away with this, and the entire nation is endangered. We must make our stand here so that the forces of godless communism are not misled concerning our determination to oppose their plans to take over the free world. The colonel was beginning to embarrass a great many people with his statements, even in a city like Chicago, and his public information officer was used increasingly by the press to water down statements. But he had also become a white hope. Colonel Evans had contempt for the repeated demands by the Freeman fighters that he and the National Guard be removed or suffer the consequences, and waited with some impatience on the Sunday night of the deadline announced in the communication center of his command post. A bit after 2 in the morning, he retired to view a John Wayne movie on late night television. The colonel liked John Wayne movies very much. His National Guard unit had taken over the Washington Park Recreation Center for their headquarters and command post. The old field house sits facing north, and across from the large field containing baseball and softball diamonds, a cricket pitch used by the Negro West Indians of the ghetto, and football fields. Separating the fields house and the athletic fields is a large drive that cuts through the park from 55th Street at Cottage Grove Avenue, ending at South Park Boulevard. The field house sits in front of the swimming pool complex built by the WPA during the Depression, with 2 Olympic-sized pools and a diving pool. Spectator stands flank the pool to the west. The east is flanked by an 8-foot iron fence and high foliage, and to the south is a children's playground. The pool had been refilled for the recreation of the National Guard troops, but since drawing sniper fire was not used at night. Freeman's reconnaissance revealed that the approach to the field house through the pool area was not guarded. At 0:15 after curfew, Freeman led 2 attack teams of 5 men each into Washington Park. A stolen Army ambulance stood at the curb facing north on South Park Boulevard, just adjacent to the children's playground, which was south of the swimming pool area. They entered through the playground, scaled the fence, and crossing the unlit and unguarded concrete area which held the 2 swimming pools and the diving pool, then entered the locker room of the field house, now the command post and personal quarters of the commander of the guard unit on ghetto occupation duty, Colonel Bull Evans. The locker room had been converted into a private office and bedroom for the colonel, with the small gymnasium above it used for the communication center for the outfit. Freeman slipped into the colonel's empty office, seated himself behind the colonel's desk, poured a generous shot of Jack Daniel Black Label from the bottle of the colonel's desk, and watched an old John Wayne Western on the television in the corner while awaiting the colonel's return from the communication center. Freeman figured that there must be an important message for the colonel to answer to make him miss the beginning of a Western. He thought that the message might have something to do with the Uncle Tom and the Black freedom fighters of Chicago. Upon entering the room, his eyes not yet accustomed to the dim light within, the colonel failed to notice the figure behind the desk until he was only a short distance away. His eyes on Wayne on television, whipping three men in the barroom brawl. He was reaching for the bottle of bourbon when he noticed the long-barreled Colt target pistol, a silencer fitted to its barrel, pointed at him by Freeman, a black man, clad in all black and seated in his chair behind his desk, a glass of whiskey at the nigger's elbow.
The colonel, ignoring the threat of the silenced pistol, reached, and all it says reach, with the foolish instinct of John Wayne, for his holster, pearl-handled revolver, filling his lungs for a bellow of outrage, cut short by an accurate judo chop behind his left ear by Stud Davis, who caught his limp body before he could fall. They carried the colonel back the way they had come, and their silently slim black figures moving swiftly and efficiently through the sultry, moonless Chicago night. They flung the colonel inside a large mail sack, over the fence like a sack of grain, and then into an awaiting ambulance, Pretty Willie seated as the driver. The colonel awakened, tied securely to a kitchen chair, his face made up in Jolson blackface with large red lips painted in. The colonel stared back into the dark, silent face with a look of grim, hauntly disdain that would have done justice to Wayne for futilely captured by Redskins. He watched one of his captors as he carefully placed a drop of liquid onto a sugar cube and put it into a cup of coffee, then approached the colonel with the cup. What was that you put on the sugar? Just a little acid, Daddy. Acid? You going to kill me? Oh no, Daddy, he said, as the colonel was held and he was forced the coffee down his throat. We're going to let you live. The next evening, at the time of his usual call, Uncle Tom informed Feldman where the kidnapped colonel could be found at a particular time and place. The colonel was found alive, as promised, seated on the edge of the reflection pool of the Fountain of Time at the southeast corner of Washington Park. The colonel was dangling his bare feet ecstatically in the pool, a look of beatitude on his face. Upon being medically examined, the colonel was found to be under the influence of LSD and said repeatedly that he had met the most wonderful niggers in the world. Chapter 18. The National Guard unit reacted with predictable ferocity to the humiliation of their commander. Never a well-disciplined unit, never a well-disciplined unit, they now roam the streets with their weapons fully loaded, a round in the chamber, and safety's off, eager for their first kill. The ghetto, with the survival instinct centuries old, faded into their homes, and the guard turned their fury on the very streets where a black mob had roamed only a short time before. All undamaged stores were used as target practice. It says a handful bombed with grenades under the assumption that they were colored on. It says we're evening things up, said one sergeant. Trigger happy, panicky, smelling, it's panicking, smelling the hatred and contempt the ghetto Negroes felt for them. They fired at almost anything that moved, and black casualties mounted. At nightfall, the ghetto hit back, and snipers roamed their turf in search of white targets. Poorly armed with pistols, shotguns, surplus World War II M1 carbines, they prove a poor match. Even the ill-trained guard unit, but their effects on the morale of the guard was staggering.
Panic increased, and the guards' casualties came mainly from their shooting one another accidentally or in fright. A sniper was rumored to be on the roof or in one of the apartments of a 3-story building, and a half track with 4 50 caliber machine guns mounted was rolled into within 50 yards of the building, and the big guns turned on it, pinning the occupants to the glass-strewn floors of the apartments for more than half an hour, killing one mother of 4 and wounding 2 others. Freeman risked roaming the streets, gathering intelligence, noting the command post, the disposition of the units, the state of their morale, their dwindling discipline. Turk, when do we go into action? Asked Stud Davis. They were gathered in the pool room later that night. Davis, Dean, Scott, and Dubois. Tonight. First, the sniper teams to keep them panicking. Then we hit hard in a few days with our attack teams. They leaned toward him in an eager anticipation, ready after the long months of training for their baptism of fire. I want all sniper teams in the field except the reserve. Sugar, you know their sectors of operation, so get the word out. I want the reserve in the field the following night, then operate from that point on with 1/3 of the teams at a time, so everyone has 2 nights of rest in the between. Daddy, you work out the rotation. Sugar, you figure out logistics and supply. Willie, get to work on propaganda leaflets to be distributed the day following our first hit. Turk, interjected Stud. Yeah, Stud. Is it all right if I work solo? I don't mind leading an attack team, but for sniper work, I'd rather work alone. Freeman thought for a minute, then said, tell you what, we'll work together the first night. I'll act as your cover. You command. If I dig your action, okay. But either way, the decision is final. Okay with me, Turk. Ride. Willie, you take command of Stud's team. Will that give you time for the leaflets? Yeah, Turk. I'll set things up and the cell can handle it from there. They're damn good. In fact, they could function without me. That's the scene we want. Nobody indispensable. Now, listen carefully and take notes. Daddy, call a weather station and get the exact time of sundown and sunrise for tomorrow night. I want everyone in a darkened room 1 hour prior to sundown to start on their night vision. All teams out on the field no later than 1 hour prior to sunrise. I also want wind direction, wind velocity, temperature, and relative humidity transmitted to the teams for calculation for firing. A large breakfast is okay, but a light lunch and no liquids or stimulants of any kind after lunch. No more than 1 cigarette an hour until H hour. 1 joint prior to an afternoon nap is all right. We all know the drill. Any questions? There were none. All right, synchronized watches by radio or telephone tomorrow night at curfew, 2200. H hour is 1 hour late, 2300. Move out. Stud Davis awakened the next morning precisely at 7, the hour he had decided to awaken the night before without the aid of an alarm. He was alert the moment he opened his eyes. He lived in a single-room kitchenette with small bathroom and shower. It was in the rear of a large kitchenette apartment building and included a back porch overlooking the L tracks. The room was neat and spare. It had combination gas range and refrigerator, a television set tucked in one corner, 2 chairs, a card table covered with oilcloth, and a transistor radio seated on a small table near the head of the bed, which doubled as a couch. Stud arose, walked into the bathroom, rubbed his light beard, and decided he did not need a shave. After washing, he returned to the room and slipped into a pair of tight-fitting jeans, which he wore only at home. He put on a percolator, and while awaiting the coffee, ate a large bowl of cornflakes with sliced banana while listening to his favorite radio station. He drank the coffee, then ate 4 fried eggs and bacon, washing it down with half a quart of milk. Not until then did he have his first cigarette of the day. He snubbed out the butt, washed his dishes, and tidied the room, a spotless oasis in the smelly, dirty building. He had a thing about cleanliness. He left his apartment and walked a few blocks to the pool room for the final briefing before the night's action. He moved loose and easy, fighting the heavy, drowsy feeling he had always felt before an important athletic contest, because it was much too early. That afternoon was soon enough, and he would allow it to grow gradually until the release of the first round fired. It had been much the same in each of the sports in which he had excelled. You controlled the feeling and used it, not the other way around.
He sat silent through the final briefing, offering no contributions and asking no questions. Freeman asked him to stay after the others had left. "I'll be your cover, Stud, but the scene is yours tonight. As I said in the briefing just now, we'll be operating as a roving team in Sector 6. Our first target will be the Quad 50. After that, targets of opportunity." Stud smiled tightly. "I saw what that thing did to the building. I never thought a machine gun could do that much damage to bricks and concrete. It's a bitch of a weapon, and multiplied by 4, you got something else. One of the little girls who was in that building screamed constantly every time they take her off tranquilizers. I want that gunner. I saw him on TV. He looked like he was sorry. He looked like he was sorry The building was still standing, said Stud. Freeman pointed to the map of the area. They're usually stationed here. We'll approach this way and fire from the roof of this building. That way, they'll have to swing the gun about 480 degrees to bring them to bear on our position after they spot us. And by that time, we should have got in our shots and been long gone. We both go after the gunner, and after he's hit, you take targets from 12 to 6 o'clock, and I take them from 6 to 12. I don't get greedy. I don't wait for them. It says don't get greedy and don't wait for them to locate us. When we get in our rounds, we move on. Okay? Stud nodded. I don't doubt you can work solo, but I have to check you out this way so the cats don't think you get special treatment. Stud smiled broadly. I'll see you at the rendezvous tonight. Easy, Stud. Stud picked up his dismantled weapon and ammunition. One of the .3 sniper rifles with the scope. He returned to his apartment, cleaned and oiled it, checked his moving parts and scope, then wrapped it in a lightly oiled cloth and placed it beneath his bed. He washed away all traces of oil from his hands, carefully cleaning his nails as he did so. He turned on his small television set, found nothing to his liking, then lay on the couch listening to the radio until time to fix lunch. Burkhart had risen to Freeman's bait, and after working on a 22 rifle range several evenings with the gang leaders, all on their best behaviors, sirring him until dizzy. He agreed to coach a larger group. It was Stud who sold him, and Burkhart was enthusiastic about his potential as a marksman. This boy Davis, he said to Freeman, is the best natural riflesman I've ever seen. You sure he had no previous experience with a rifle? I'm certain, Mr. Burkhart, Freeman replied. Amazing, said Burkhart, watching Stud firing prone on the university's 22 range. Why he's potential Olympic team caliber. I'm certain he'll be able to do well in the national junior championships in less than a year. If he sticks with it, said Freeman, he loses interest in anything as soon as he's mastered it. As soon as he really becomes good with a rifle, he'll probably won't even want to see one. But Freeman was wrong. Stud Davis had finally found his métier, the one thing which, and I'm probably jacking that word up, métier, the one thing which quieted the fears he hid so well. He never saw a bull at the center of the target, but always a man, any man. In less than 2 months, he was a better marksman with a rifle than Freeman. To Burkhart's charging, but not Freeman's surprise. The National Rifle Association refused their applications for membership, and the club broke up. But 10 of the Cobras had several months of intensive training on a rifle range. Scott and Dean left the pool room together. You going home now, Daddy? Nah, I better check with all the leaders of the sniper team. Make sure everything's groovy. Turk said to cool it until tonight. It's all right. Turk will understand. Cool it. Scott walked home and spent the afternoon figuring the formulas for the flight trajectory of a 30 caliber bullet for various angles and ranges. Mathematics always relaxed him. Freeman spent the morning at the office, left just before lunch, announcing he would tour the riot area, and made a last minute check of the position to be attacked. They had not been moved, or they had not been moved. He returned to his apartment, cooked and ate a light lunch, went to his bedroom, and slept until late evening. He awakened to the first sound of the alarm and dressed in the dark. He met Stud at the appointed rendezvous, both dressed in dark clothes, including low-cut black sneakers, wearing wraparound sunglasses to protect their night vision. The other snipers moved in. Teams of three moved in teams of three. One as a decoy, the other two as fire team.
The decoy was to shoot from opposite the fire team to draw fire, then disappear. The remaining two would then open fire from behind to catch the guardsmen exposed and firing in the opposite direction. Without a word, Stud and Freeman moved silently over the rooftops and took their position. Above and beyond the Quad 50s, mounted on a half-track, a World War II vehicle, as was most of the guards' equipment, but deadly nevertheless. Stud held up two fingers to indicate a range of 200 yards. Freeman nodded his confirmation. Stud nodded again, and they each slipped their arms through the slings using the roof parapet as a support, backed around into the chamber, and slipped off to safety. The gunner was seated on the mount, smoking a cigarette and talking to one of the crew. Freeman placed the crosshairs of the scope on his middle, and at the sound of Stud's shot, squeezed off his own. Both rounds hit, and the gunner dropped to the street, dead before he hit. Stud shot him again as he lay in the street. They both emptied their clips at the scattering crew below, reloaded, and disappeared as silently and swiftly as they had come. Across the rooftops came the scattered firing of other teams in action. The war had begun. That night, the freedom fighters killed 6, wounded 19, and received no casualties. Escalation by both sides could be expected. After 5 nights of sniper activity, Freeman ordered a 2-day rest and then ordered his attack teams into the field. Same scene as with the snipers, all teams in the field the first night, then on a 1/3 rotation after that. We don't need any heroes hit. Hit and run, hit them when they least expect it, then disappear as soon as they deploy and return your fire. If they follow too aggressively, ambush them, otherwise vanish. Stud Davis moved his attack team down the alley through the moonless night. He could hear the big rats scurry into hiding as they approached and return to their feeding as they passed. He had hunted the rats at night in the same alleys. 2 boys leading, one with an air rifle, the other with the flashlight. One would fix the rat with the beam of the light and the other with fire. Unless hit exactly right, the BB would stun but not kill, and the other boys would finish the rat with sticks. It was good sport, and he had learned that the rats did not fear man. They just got out of your way because it was easier. The rats often charged the group when cornered if the boy with the air rifle missed. He was leading the maneuver squad with his team, the fire squad approaching the street, which intersected the alley from the opposite block. He halted his men with the hand signal and looked out into the deserted street. It was several hours after curfew, and the streets were silent and empty. He checked his watch, then motioned his men into cover at the alley mouthway and behind parked cars a short distance away. He saw that across the street, the fire squad was already in place. His maneuver squad of 5 were each armed with a hunting knife, pistol, grenades, 3 with shotguns, the other 2 with semi-automatic carbines. The fire team were all equipped with weapons on full automatic. He heard the patrol approach. Too close together, containing 4 men each. The driver, a rifleman, and 2 tending the mounted machine gun at the rear of the vehicle. Stud waited until they were about 10 yards away, stood, and threw a grenade. 4 others followed suit, and they all ducked for cover. The explosions followed quickly upon one another, and the sharp staccato of automatic fire echoed the loud thumps of grenades. One Jeep lay on its side, the other had crashed a parked car. Stud signaled, and the fire ceased. He led his team cautiously toward the ambushed patrol, their guns at the ready. He turned off the ignition of the Jeep in turn and motioned his men to strip the bodies of guns and ammunition. One boy of about 19, Stud's age, moved feebly in a pool of his own blood, shock and surprise on his face. Stud paused to look at his face. He might have played basketball against him. He bent to take his weapon and ammunition. The boy asked over and over, "Why? Why? Why?" Stud bent close so that the boy could hear and said, "Because it's war, Whitey." They finished, and in seconds, the dark of the alley swallowed them up. The rats moved from their burrows, sniffing the strange smells in the air. The bolder and more curious ones moving toward the compelling smell of blood. The rest returned to their feeding, and the occupied ghetto was silent once again. And that concludes chapter 18 of The Spook Who Sat by the Door, the novel by Sam Greenlee. Today we read chapters 16, 17, and 18. That means we only got 2 chapters left, chapter 19 and 20. We should be able to get tomorrow afternoon if that's cool with Reggie.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah, okay, for sure. So we gonna hit y'all early tomorrow afternoon, and we gonna close out this great story. This book is renowned in the community. It is infamous amongst its detractors, and it is famous amongst its supporters. Most people have seen the movie. Many people have read the book. And we are bringing this book to y'all live on the YouTube airwaves, as we've done with many other books, and we will continue to do so, Lord willing. I hope y'all have enjoyed this read. I hope y'all are enjoying this read. I hope y'all tune in tomorrow to hear us close it out. As y'all know, we do this to make it cool to read. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times it's seen as being taboo to read for brothers like ourselves. So, you know what I'm saying? We got to set that example and make it cool to read and show that in these books there are some interesting and compelling stories as well as in other books, there's some great information for our people to digest. Want to appreciate and show thanks to Mark Stearns, Andrew Charles, who's always in here. I think I've seen Kyle, the boxing section, PGH Big Dog. Who else is in the chat today? Let me see. Who else is in the chat today? I think that's about it. On the mic with Terrence Beatty. That's what I was looking for. Okay, yeah. See, my man TBOG up in here. And before we get out of here, we're gonna do a 3-second or 10-second moment of silence for one of the greatest fighters to ever fight, which was marvelous Marvin Hagler, who transitioned to be with the ancestors today. So in his passing, we're gonna have a 10-second moment of silence for one of the greatest fighters and historical fighters in the history of boxing, the great, marvelous Marvin Hagler, the Hall of Famer. So we're gonna start that right now. All right. Yes, sir. Salute to Marvin Hagler in his transition. You know what I'm saying? It's we're gonna celebrate his life, you know what I mean? And the contributions that he had that we were able to be a part of, which is his legacy in boxing. Condolences and salute to his family, friends, and loved ones, and to any of his fans out there that also followed his career. But we want to make sure that we point out that he was more than a boxer, more than an athlete. He was a man who had a family, he had friends, and he had loved ones that appreciate him more than we could ever think that we could appreciate the brother. So salute to you, marvelous Marvin Hagler. Rest well with the ancestors, and salute to your family, friends, and loved ones. As far as the spook who sat by the door, thank you all who tuned in today to listen to us live. Thank you to all the ones that's listening to us on the replay. Please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button and get the word out that we over here reading, and we're trying to elevate the consciousness of our people and bringing them things that they normally wouldn't get on these airwaves, which is, you know what I'm saying, a little bit of entertainment via books. All right. With that being said, we see where we are in the story. It has popped off. The war has popped off. They have moved with the synchronicity that they've been preparing for this entire time. The story has led up to this moment. The ish has hit the fan, and like clockwork, the Black Freedom Fighters of Chicago, led by Uncle Tom, aka Dan Freeman, have sprung into action with militant precision, and these guys don't even know what hit them in this National Guard. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and let Reggie close us out, get his little words in, get his salutes in, and we're going to get out of here, man, and tune in tomorrow with us as we close out this book. Go ahead, Reg.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank y'all for coming through, man, checking out this spectacular book, and also this book which turned to a spectacular movie. And man, I like what's going on is Freeman is outsmarting the hell out of these so-called intellectual whites from society, these military whites, and he's using properly trained, regular, disenfranchised Black youth to outsmart a system and taking it down systematically, and them just being overwhelmed at what they're fighting. They really don't even know what the enemy looks like, and this is how you go about doing things covertly. And him not wanting any type of recognition, attachment, or to be identified. You get in there, get your stuff off, get up out of there. Get in there, get out. He's already steps ahead of the counters in which they'll attack. You shoot here, you move over to this position here. I mean, it's just masterful work of someone working out a game plan like a real general, a real combat general. And I like it. And it's all behind what experience he gained from a job that kind of underused him, but him paying attention and doing his work properly. This is dope stuff, man. But that's all I got, folks. Thank y'all for coming through and peeping this book with us.
Yes, sir. Y'all know what to do. Tune in tomorrow, and we're going to close it out. So now I'm going to hit y'all with the video so we can close out. Hit y'all with these visuals so that the people looking on the replay can know what it is that we reading. Till then, peace.
I wrote the book in 1966, and the film was made in 73. And here we are 30 years later, and I think it's every bit as powerful, if not more so, than it was when I first did it.
I'm gonna name my last album "The Spook" to Sat by the Door. You know what I mean? When I finished my situation with our partnership at Atlantic, and for anybody that ain't seen that book, seen that movie or read the book, it's about a gang member from Chicago who presented himself in a way he never caught no cases. He had a clean cut look, and he infiltrated the CIA.
Yep.
And he became educated and basically he used their agenda, which was to have a token nigga in the CIA for political reasons. You know, we gonna speak blunt, fuck it. He used it against him. And I think that in terms of hip hop, you think of the message that they embrace, I feel parallel with, like, you know what I mean? The power structure. I don't mean the culture of hip hop, but the power structure of music. They got prescribed personas they expect from us. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like the way he used their intention against him was one of my underlying strategies.
I wouldn't give a damn if nobody white ever read my book. If they do, I want them to pay for it and get my royalties. And if they get something out of it, I say, fine. But my audience is not white. I don't write for black bourgeois intellectuals. I write for the people on the block where I live.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
The Spook, who sat by the door. The controversial best-selling novel now becomes a shocking screen reality. The story of the first black agent in the CIA.
Whoever they select will be the best-known spy since 007.
Their first mistake was letting him in.
And let me congratulate you on being the first Negro officer in the Central Intelligence Agency.
Their worst mistake was letting him out.
You really want to mess with Whitey? I can show you how.
For 5 years, he was their token Negro.
Freeman, you people must serve.
For 5 years, he kept his cool.
Man, you just don't belong. I think you'd be happier with a mop in your hands.
Like your mama.
And in return, they taught him how to spy, how to fight, how to kill. For 5 years, he was the spook who sat by the door. And then he turned gangs of ghetto kids into a highly trained guerrilla army.
We live off the land. We match technology with spontaneity and improvisation. Men against machines, brains against computers. Now, if you don't think it can work, you check out Algeria, Kenya, Korea, and Iran. Can you dig it?
He turned a summer riot into a revolution.
This is not about hate white folks. It's about loving freedom enough to die or kill for it if necessary.
He turned the American dream into a nightmare. Yesterday, a novel. Today, a movie. The spook who sat by the door.
In the mayor's office is now air-conditioned, courtesy of the Black Freedom Fighters of Chicago.
I want people to think. And out of thought, concerned action. You don't act first and then think. You think first and then act. That's why we were given brains. That's why we don't act instinctively. And when we do, we're wrong. Whichever way they go, I want them to think about what I've had to say. I'm not trying to recruit anybody. I'm not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I want to shake up the mind. I want people to look at that movie and go out of there thinking. And I think I've accomplished that purpose.